Hello and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek. I'm John Harrington, the editor of PRWeek UK. Before we start, a quick note about PRWeek's Measurement Conference, which is returning to London on the 18th of November. With the industry under as much pressure as ever to prove its value, this is a must-attend event full of great speakers and tons of useful insights. Visit prweek.co.uk/events for more. Right, this week's podcast returns to the issue of transparency among PR agencies. PRWeek's first transparency report has got a lot of people talking this week. The report gives a star rating to every agency in the PRWeek UK Top 150 based on the level of disclosure around parental leave policies, whether they are living wage employers, and also around gender and ethnicity pay gaps. A maximum 4 stars are available. Our view is that being open about policies is the best way to attract a more diverse workforce and encourage good practice. Some headline figures briefly. 25 of the top 150 agencies received 4 stars, while 30 received no stars at all. Meanwhile, early research by PRWeek on the top 150 found only around 1 in 4 disclosed salaries in their job ads. So, plenty to discuss. Joining me today are Katie Eborall, Head of North for Grayling, which is one of the 4-star agencies. Katie also sits on the Women in PR committee. We also have Sheeraz Gulsher, co-founder of People Like Us, the networking and campaign group for minority, ethnic, marcomms and media professionals. PRWeek and People Like Us work together on the Pay Gaps report, which has its 6th edition coming soon later this year. Okay, on to questions. First off, overall, are you surprised at the results of the transparency report, particularly the fact that, we had a good number, 25 of the top 150 agencies getting 4 stars, but also 30 having 0, and obviously the others in between. Katie, what are your thoughts? Were you surprised?
Sadly, I wasn't really surprised. I think I was more surprised at the number that were transparent than not, which is a little bit pessimistic of me. It is fantastic to see that transparency starting to come through and some quite big agencies in the mix there. But we do really need to start seeing that step change across the industry. And my hope would be that as more agencies start to be transparent about their policies, that more follow suit and we create this step change within the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sheeraz, do you agree?
Yeah, well, look, I'm slightly staggered that as an industry of expert communicators and ones that pride themselves on solving complex business challenges, that the one issue that we haven't managed to crack is transparency and creating a fairer industry for everyone. It feels like a huge missed opportunity for agencies to help improve, attract more diverse talent and help keep them in our industry. So it feels like a big miss for lots of organizations that are doing fantastic work, but perhaps neglecting their people really. There's a lot of their parts included in the transparency project are fairly simple and low cost to implement. So it feels like a bit of a shame that more agencies haven't taken this on board, because our industry has been very good in drumming up interest on these issues. Our trade media and lots of organizations have talked tirelessly about the importance of transparency. So in short, it feels like a bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah, and I guess the next question is, why is it important for agencies to be transparent about these things? We obviously spoke about diversity and encouraging good practice, but it'd be good to put a bit of meat on the bones with that, really. Could you sort of give some examples of, how not being transparent can really deter people, can really, mean that agencies miss out on a lot of good talent ultimately?
Yeah, absolutely. Agencies are undoubtedly missing out on a lot of great talent by not being transparent about their policies. If you're somebody from a lower socioeconomic background, if you are a single parent, if you're somebody with a disability, those policies aren't just a nice to have, they're absolutely critical. We still have a culture where it's taboo in a job interview to ask for those policies, and knowing upfront the organisations that you're applying to are going to be there for you and take care of you, because, let's face it, we expect a lot of people within this sector. It's hard graft, and knowing that you work for an organisation that's going to be there for you through your challenging or absolutely normal life stages that people go through is really, really important to people. And that equity piece starts with transparency.
Yeah, totally. And, Sheeraz, obviously, we worked together on the Pay Gaps project, which is all about transparency around wages for several years now, as I mentioned. Yeah, have you got any other things to add to this beyond what Katie was saying about the real positive impacts that being transparent can have on both the business and the employees and potential employees?
Well, look, it's clear there are systemic issues at play in the UK PR industry. Representation has barely moved from so many factors, including ethnic minority representation at the senior level, more female leadership, people with disabilities, and as Katie touched on, issue around class. And to help address that, we really need to understand what's causing these disparities. And by reporting things like pay gaps, it really gives employers the evidence to help create tangible action. We need to understand the scale of an issue before we address it in a meaningful way. Somewhat like creating a compelling PR campaign, it all starts with a great insight and data that we can meaningfully take action from. And from an employee point of view, if I was looking for a PR agency job right now and an agency didn't publish their pay bands, I'd immediately be turned off. I speak to a huge amount of people at all levels, and that's the first thing that they'll notice before even speaking to someone for an interview. If you aren't publishing your pay bands, I think it can cause challenges in a number of ways. It could put people on the back foot. I think a lot of people aren't geared up to talk about salary. And also, it can waste a huge amount of time in the recruitment process. You can go through all stages of a role, respond to a task, and finally get to an offer stage and realize, actually, this is 5 or 10 grand less than what I'm on right now. And also, raises a question of trust. By not publishing your pay bands, it may leave employees wondering whether they are underpaid. So I think it's a real sensible step that people are transparent. And there's lots of legislative measures coming up that will eventually require employers to do that anyway. So I think it's really important that companies are getting ahead of the curve. So the ones that have been included in the transparency report have taken a really important step in sending a great positive message to their teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And what message do you think it says about the agencies that aren't disclosing this information?
Silence really breeds speculation, doesn't it? And we could sit here for a long time and speculate about, what's going on there. It's fair to say that agencies have had a bit of a rough ride of it over the last few years, and there could be a whole number of reasons that agencies are not willing to share that information and that data. I guess what I'm more interested in for moving forwards is what are those barriers and how can we help break them down? We've had, it was traditional in the PR agency, going back 20 years that nothing was shared externally, with other agencies. But I think now that we're starting to see that step change, that some agencies are doing it and are willing to put their head above the parapet, I'd like to see how we can break down more of those barriers to enable a level playing field for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is really interesting as well. The point you make about, where are the barriers? I get the impression that among some big agencies in particular, maybe those that are part of big networks, maybe the UK leadership or other senior members of the team do want to take part in this. They do want to be transparent, but there are other people, maybe in the group, maybe elsewhere, maybe in other departments that kind of put a block to it. Do you think that's the case? Do you think that's fair?
It's very hard to say, obviously, not being within those agencies. I also don't think that we can underestimate that there's been a bit of a step change, from a DEI perspective over the last year or so, where there's been a lot of focus on, criticism. And I think, all of those eyeballs on what agencies are doing from a DEI perspective, it's a lot of pressure to live up to for the bigger agencies to be seen to be leading the curve. So yeah, it's very hard to comment on what's going on behind the scenes, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, what do you think, and maybe this is obvious, but I think it's worth reflecting on, what do you think are the real positive advantages to the business of being transparent regarding this sort of information? I did a bit of totting up yesterday for an article I wrote, and the 25 agencies that did get 4 stars outperformed our top 150 significantly. I mean, the average growth there was more than twice that of the top 150. And yes, there are lots of caveats to that as well, but I do think there's a link there. What do you think? Do you think that's there's a real strong link between business performance and being transparent?
Oh, undoubtedly. All of this for me leads to commercial success. You can absolutely see it. For me, I think there's three key things that you get from this type of transparency. The first is reputation. That's reputation among clients, among, potential people that you might want to hire in the future, among the industry in general. And I don't think that reputation piece is going to be lost on anybody. But the reputation then obviously leads to that access to the wider talent pool. So that means that you're able to access the absolute best talent, have your pick of the best talent. But then ultimately that then also leads into retention. If you've got happy staff who feel motivated, who feel that they're working for an agency that's transparent and that really takes its time to review its policies continually and take care of its teams, they're much more motivated and productive to stay with the business, but also to look after the clients. And that in turn then raises the bar from a business perspective and feeds back in again to that reputation piece. It's almost like a continuous cycle. And we definitely see the commercial impact of that. We've invested quite a lot of time into our DEI strategy, and we are definitely seeing that that's having an impact both internally and externally.
Great, that's good to hear. I think move on now to some of the specifics that we found. Obviously, one of the things we asked about was parental leave policies. Katie, I wonder what you thought of the parental leave policy sort of trends that we picked up in our coverage. Do you think agencies are doing enough around parental leave?
I mean, agencies are doing more than they've ever done before around parental leave. It's really encouraging to see some of the ones at the top and what they're offering. But ultimately, we are falling behind other sectors still. There are numerous sectors such as the public sector, engineering, professional services, financial services, where the standard is 6 months full pay for maternity pay, and there's equal access for paternity leave as well. We're obviously not seeing anything like that within our industry. So although it's encouraging to see that there's a lot of enhanced leave, I still think that we've got a long way to go. What we can't underestimate is the impact that has, and disproportionate impact in particular on women. We know that recently from the report that came out that we're losing a lot of female leaders from the sector in their 40s. And one of the things that we link that to is women who go off to have children. If those women, when they go off to have children, aren't supported financially through proper maternity policies, if they don't have the right return to work support, the right access to flexible working arrangements, etc., you can see why that then becomes really prohibitive for them to continue to advance into leadership positions within those agencies, and why they are ultimately leaving the sector. So this piece is really, really critical for us to start paying attention to get right, to make sure that we're bringing more female leaders up through the ranks in the sector. We're an industry that thrives on female staff at those junior and mid levels. So it's always really surprising that we don't have access to the volume of female leaders that we should have, having those voices available in those leadership positions.
Absolutely. And by the way, some of the sort of top line findings that we saw from our report is that there was 3 agencies that had a maximum 26 weeks full maternity pay. One had 25, then there were 12 that had 24 weeks. So I definitely recommend having a look at that. And incidentally, maximum weeks for paternity pay, there were 3 that had 24, 2 that had 16, and then the rest were a bit lower than that. So definitely check that out. But thank you for your comments on that. And I think it's extremely important. Looking at living wage, some of the findings there, 34 agencies didn't provide information on whether or not they paid it. I would assume that most of them probably do pay at or above those levels, but we don't know for sure. When it comes to living wage, do you think this is an issue of disclosure, or do you think there really are a number of top 150 agencies that do pay below that level for junior comms staff? Sheeraz, what do you think? What are your...
I really, truly hope everyone on the top 150 and beyond is paying the living wage, no matter where the agency is in the UK. It's really straightforward to get accredited by the Living Wage Foundation. It costs very little amount of money to be fully accredited and checked. And it's so vital if we want a breadth of diverse voices to join our industry and remain in our industry. I think we don't struggle to attract people to PR. But the problem we have time and time again is keeping them in our industry. And in London, it's a touch over £27,000. And even with that amount of money, it's quite difficult to live here when you consider rent is possibly at the highest it's ever been, and the cost of groceries and commuting. And it already adds an immense amount of pressure to someone joining a new agency role whereby you are juggling a million things at once. And to compound that with also worrying about living and having something to eat or having somewhere decent to live is really difficult. And it, again, puts people who are already disadvantaged or underrepresented potentially further on the back foot. If they don't have a relative they can stay with or family that can lend them money, it creates a new barrier and threatens to further add a new layer of underrepresentation. So my call to agencies listening to this, if you aren't already paying the London living wage, please do, and go to the Living Wage Foundation to find out more on how to be accredited.
Great. And Katie, do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I find it really hard to understand why you wouldn't disclose that you were paying a living wage. And that really, really bothers me, because we're talking about our most junior members of staff. They are arguably our most vulnerable members of staff. And when you're also considering the fact that, we know that pay gaps exist between men and women. We know that pay gaps exist between people of different social classes. We know that pay gaps exist between people from different ethnicities. It means that disproportionately, those junior people that are from those groups are probably suffering even worse, as Sheeraz says, worrying about actually being able to afford to live, to eat, to have somewhere safe to stay, etc. And that really, really bothers me. I just can't believe that as an industry that we're okay with that and that's where we are. So I'd like to think that it's a case of non-disclosure, but it does bother me that it could potentially not be.
Okay, well, finally, as I mentioned earlier on, pay gaps report from people like us and PRWeek has been going for several years now. We're currently in the process of asking agencies to provide details of their gender and ethnicity pay gaps. And the deadline is 22nd of August. So Sheeraz, I thought we could end on, a message for agencies that are maybe thinking about getting involved, maybe haven't in the past. What would you say to them?
My message to those agencies is to take the leap. You'll see the 40 or so agencies that have entered year on year are making great strides in making their organisations far more inclusive. And what that means for them as businesses, as John alluded to earlier in this podcast, the number of agencies that have been transparent shows some signs of delivering better business practices and better work, which is a really positive thing to see. So it's not only is it the right thing to do, it's going to be great for the work you deliver. And while reporting pay gaps isn't a silver bullet, it's just a great exercise in figuring out where you are and how to become better year on year. So I would encourage everyone to have a look at previous year's findings. So beyond the numbers, it's just a wonderful opportunity to share best practices and what's working well in diversifying your workforce and making sure everyone is paid fairly and where to go from there. I think the barrier to some organisations may be that they're worried that their numbers aren't quite where they should be. And in all honesty, that's okay. Not everyone will be where they want to be. There's so many varying factors, but what's important to you and what will be really important to your teams and your clients is you're willing to be held publicly accountable for where you're at. It's such a brilliant statement to your team and the rest of the industry that actually we're going to put our hands up and here's where we're at and here's how we're going to get better year on year. So I would say go ahead and make that statement to your teams.
Absolutely, yeah. And I also feel like it's starting to feel like quite a club of the agencies that take part, the regular ones. I think it's actually quite nice when we have a get together and just to sort of discuss all of the challenges and opportunities and the advantages, as you say, of taking part in the project. Just feels like a really positive vibe, if you like, for want of a better, slightly less cringy word. Do you agree?
Absolutely. It's just a great group of leaders that are wanting to make the industry fairer for everyone, and they have the firm belief that the industry should be for all and everyone should have an equal opportunity to succeed and thrive. So we're communicating and delivering the best work we can. And everyone deserves to have a fair shot. And that's what these 40 or so outstanding agencies are saying. So yeah, this is a great club. So come join us.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Okay, well, that's all the time we have for today. Do check out the transparency report information on prweek.co.uk, where you can also find details of the pay gaps report and how to enter and have a look at last year's, see how it all works. Thanks so much to Katie and Sheeraz for joining me and for your brilliant insights. And thank you everyone for listening. Until next time, goodbye.